I remember in the UK, I was working at a club one night and someone said, oh, there'll always be women like you in the world, like, as in, like, it was quite derogatory, kind of, you know, and I was like, what do you mean, like, what exactly is a woman like me, you know, and he was like, like, you know, kind of got really stuck on that. I like people to know that they're, yeah, like, we are real women, and we have a variety of different ways of expressing ourselves, and you know, I think humanising it is so important. I don't like stereotypes of any kind, you know, so. I had quite an unconventional upbringing. I was born overseas, I was born in Germany, but I grew up in quite a religious, um, I guess, a religious sort of, I came from a religious background that was quite conservative. It was it was a religious cult, so they had their own kind of belief system, I suppose. It was sort of a, I guess people would say, a Christian-based cult. They did sort of make reference to the Bible and things, but they also had quite a unique structure of their own rules that they kind of added to it. So I mean, I laugh about it with my friends now, but that, you know, we had very strict dress codes, and we didn't wear makeup or jewellery, we didn't watch TV, we didn't use computers, we kind of lived quite a separate life, and so the outside world, once I left when I was in an adult, early adulthood, I was about 21, kind of discovering the world on the outside was a huge challenge for me for a long time. It was a very patriarchal society, and some people have said to me, you know, oh, does your sort of need to please men come from that kind of, you know, background where, you know, people just got married and had babies and pleased their husbands? And I think for me it's kind of, it's an interesting thought to toy with, but also obviously being so extremely conservative and religious, I had really negative views around sex being, you know, sinful or wrong and not sort of for pleasure. It's definitely a world that you can kind of get lost in. Your perception of money, as much as we don't like to think it does change. You know, all of a sudden you're making a huge amount of money. You're in a context, like especially in the strip club or in clubs, where you're drinking, you're constantly feeling admired and loved, and you know, people, you know, are very generous, and you kind of can get lost in this kind of fantasy world. And so for me, when I think about, say, my daughter doing it, I would be 100% okay with her doing it if she was very grounded and mature as a person. I came to this job late in life. I had another profession, I had an education, and as a result I feel like I have a great deal of choice about this job.
Like, it's the same job if you're sucking dick for $20 or if you're sucking dick for $500. Like, it's the same work. And I think that's something as workers that we really need to, like, be better about kind of challenging, because if we allow that narrative to go on, then the only people who are going to experience a reduction in stigma is the people that probably need it the least. You know, like the people that need it the most, who are at the most danger. And like, danger only exists in the sex industry because of stigma. Like, I don't think there's anything more inherently dangerous about sex work than any other work in which you're one-on-one in a private setting with a person. I was really broke, and I had had a bunch of conversations with people about sex work, like from a kind of outsider's perspective, and it had sort of been something that lots of people had been talking about around me, like talking about the morality of sex work and whether or not it was, a good thing to do or a bad thing to do. And every time the conversations came up, I was like, why wouldn't you do that? And then I think one day I was like, well, why aren't I doing that if I don't have an issue with this and I'm shit broke? Like the common question when people talk about sex work is saying like, well, I wouldn't want my little girl to grow up and be a sex worker. And she's like, you should reframe that question and say, well, your little girl has grown up and she is a sex worker, so how do you want to make that better for her? And instead of being like, oh, I never want her to do that, it's like, well, if she is going to do that, how do I want to protect her in doing that? And part of protecting her in doing that is addressing these like really common misconceptions about the sex industry and saying, you know what, women, I mean, it's not always women, but predominantly women are going to do this work. It's always existed, it always will exist, and it has always existed because if we link it back into capitalism, it gets fucking hard to live in this society. It's fucking hard to not live hand to mouth, and this is a way that people have found to be like, I can break out of this cycle. So as long as that cycle exists, the sex industry is still going to exist, and the only way that you make that safe for people is being like, you need to do some work on your internalized whorephobia. You need to be like, how do I make this better? And that's removing the shadows, removing the dark side of the industry. And the shadows and the dark side exist because they've been allowed to grow. It's like mold. It's allowed to kind of get bigger and grosser and more toxic and more dangerous.
She's been doing burlesque for a few years. I met Moira at pole. So she did pole dancing, and then she made a few of my costumes. She's a trained costume person. And then we became friends. So it was probably, it might be 4 years ago, but I'm not sure. If you're big or small or, you know, have a disability or anything, everyone accepts you for exactly who you are. Before I did burlesque, I never dressed like this. I always wanted to dress like this. I was a little bit out there, but I wasn't so much like this. But as soon as I started burlesque, it just got bigger and bigger. Technically, if you're a subcontractor, you should be able to choose your own hours, is that right? But it's a bit of a give and take in that situation. If you're, you know, you roster on for a shift and you're expected to be there, you need a sick certificate if you don't show up.
We have the expectations of employees with the rights of subcontractors.
Exactly, yeah.
So their club's really easy to wash their hand of us and be like, no, sorry, roster's full, but we're still expected to act like employees.
You say strippers are sex workers in a strip club change room, and girls will lose their mind. There are girls that are like, yes, I'm a sex worker, and that's fine. And there are girls that are like, I am not a sex worker. I am not this. And I've seen it from pole dancing, I've seen it from burlesque, I've seen it from stripping. I've seen it from friends who are full service in massages. You know, there's always this layers. You know, burlesque dancers, they're not strippers, we're classy. And strippers, we're not prostitutes. And excuse problematic language, but that's the terminology that people use. Girls that work in brothels, they're like, oh, I'm not street workers. Massage parlour girls, they'll have something against someone else, and we're all just a big community and we need to support each other, but there's still those divides and there's still those, we don't want to be associated, we think we're better than someone else in the industry, or someone in the industry thinks we're better than them. And that's an interesting one now as the face of burlesque in South Australia, that I'm quite open about my work within the stripper industry and the sex work industry, and I'm quite vocal about it and how that's going to go down, because there's not been a face like that before. There's not been someone so outspoken.
And the winner of Miss Burlesque South Australia 2019 is my
I think that idea about, you know, it all being about nakedness and sex and this lurid kind of idea of what we do, like, I honestly say to people, if it was just about that, people would be in front of their computer screens watching porn or something. Like, it's actually about a human connection, about talking with someone, about sharing closeness with someone. And we're so disconnected in this day and age. People work really busy jobs, they're disconnected for a number of reasons, you know, and we give them the opportunity to connect with something that gives them joy and companionship, and like, and I think that's so important to remember. I always think that if it was just about sex and nakedness, there would be a whole other avenue for that, you know. We're so much more than that.
We're all battling society stigma together, no matter if you work in a massage parlour or you're a burlesque dancer or you do anything that's that empowers female sexuality or involves female sexuality, you're gonna be whacked with a whole bunch of societal stigma.